He must rest quietly. He can't work at all. Otherwise, if the blood clot doesn't dissolve, it will be a big problem.
In the 4th year of my marriage to my husband, he lost his memory in a car accident. His memory stopped right before we got married. Seeing the wedding ring on my hand, he spoke with a mocking tone, with a hint of sadness in his eyes.
Who was unlucky enough to marry you?
I glanced at his bandaged head and thought to myself, bro, if I said it was you, I'm really afraid you'd pass out from anger. Don't ask. It definitely wasn't you.
What year did you get married?
I've been married for 4 years.
What was I doing back then?
I grinned and said, you gave me a huge red envelope back then.
Absolutely impossible.
For some reason, his handsome eyes revealed a bit of disappointment. It seems this guy is hard to fool even with amnesia. Based on our friendship, he would never give me a big red envelope. He would most likely cause trouble, making my wedding completely turn into the most ridiculous joke in history. Seeing him dazed, my hands moved faster than my brain, and I reached out to pinch his cheek. Let's go home.
Go home?
His eyes suddenly flashed with a glimmer of light, as if he had grabbed onto a lifeline. Yes! Your Qin family went bankrupt, you know? You are now my family's nanny. Qin Xingye, who had been holding on without breaking down, at this moment, completely collapsed. I played the act to the end, having discussed it with my family early on, and coordinated the story with his parents as well. To make him rest at home peacefully for a month or so, we kept it from him first, to keep him from worrying about company matters. So when he sat in the car, still holding on to that last bit of hope, and called his parents to confirm, the answer he got was,
"Son, our family really went bankrupt."
He hung up the phone, his eyes turning red. The once high and mighty young master has now truly become a penniless pauper. After a while, he finally asked with a hoarse voice,
Then, what do I have to do at your house?
Chores, laundry, cooking, serving tea and water. Oh. He turned his face away, looking out the window. His aloof side profile, in such a depressed state, somehow gained a touch of fragility. Anyone who saw him couldn't help but sigh. What a pitiful little thing. I was already overjoyed on the inside, but on the outside, I had to hold back my laughter. You have to know that the usual Qin Xingye was an incredibly arrogant and aloof guy. His path growing up was absolutely that of a golden boy. Completely overpowered and unstoppable all the way. I once said that if I ever wanted to see Qin Xingye get anxious and teary-eyed over me, I'd have to wait until the day something terrible happened to me. When those words reached Qin Xingye's ears,
Keep dreaming. I'd only go over to set off a couple of firecrackers for you.
Seeing him this vulnerable now feels absolutely amazing. I held back my laughter the whole way running home. Once home, I first ran to the study to finish the mountain of paperwork. By the time I went back to my own bedroom, I suddenly noticed Qin Xingye in my room, holding a basin of warm water. He was spacing out in my room. I saw what he was clutching in his hand and thought, oh no, it was his pajamas. Honestly, this guy is so loyal. One set of pajamas lasted him from college to our 4th year of marriage. He turned to look at me.
Didn't you marry someone else? Why are my clothes in your bedroom?
I smiled and walked up to him.
Ah, you. What do you want?
After I got married, my husband was always away. He forgot all about me, his wife.
Then I am.
I curled my lip. Before I even had a chance to speak, I looked up and saw him with his head down, a cloud of sorrow in his eyes.
I can stay and keep you company.
Seeing how lonely and pitiful he looked, I wondered if I had fooled him too much. Young Master Qin was such a proud person, waking up to become the family's. Was this shock too severe? But the next second,
Did you ever like me? Speak.
bro, you. It wasn't that I didn't want to say. I just really didn't know how to make it up, bro.
Is it Bai Xiaoyan?
Later, I fell asleep in the bedroom. I vaguely felt someone cover me with a blanket. I murmured softly, hubby, I'm cold. Early the next morning, I instinctively reached out for the person next to me, but only touched a cold bed. I immediately woke up and quickly got up. When I saw the figure bustling about by the dining table downstairs, I finally felt relieved. Habit truly is a terrifying thing. When I sat down at the dining table, Qin Xingye was standing to the side. Eat. Aren't you hungry after being busy all morning? He sat down, looking slightly uneasy. Halfway through the meal, he suddenly asked me with a troubled expression,
Why Bai Xiaoyan?
I almost spat a mouthful of milk all over the floor, but I forced it down. Staring at his depressed, distracted appearance, I realized Bai Xiaoyan had indeed left a deep-rooted mark in his mind. Truth be told, Bai Xiaoyan could be considered my first love back in college. Bai Xiaoyan was the senior assigned to welcome freshmen. He was different from Qin Xingye. Qin Xingye had always been the role model the elders compared me to since we were kids, because we had a huge fight when we were little over who got to be the big boss while playing house. We formed an unbreakable grudge from then on. Yet our paths growing up were practically identical, so we saw each other all the time. We had to compete in everything. I signed up for piano lessons, and his family bought a Steinway. I enrolled in an oil painting class, and he started practicing sketching. I said I planned to test into University A, and he said he could get into University B. Later, clutching a college entrance exam score 30 points higher than mine, he reunited with me at the same university. I called him clingy, and he said we were enemies on a narrow road. On the college campus, we went our separate ways. I was immediately swallowed by the surging crowd. Wandering aimlessly, I turned my head. Qin Xingye's height and looks made him stand out like a crane among a flock of chickens in the crowd. Quite eye-catching. I opened my mouth to call out to him, but a girl with blushing cheeks rushed over to him, shyly and nervously asking for his contact info. He lowered his eyes. The sunlight was just right. The words died on my lips, and I turned my face away. I don't know if he added that girl from that day or not, and I happened to run into Bai Xiaoyan right at this moment. He smiled at me amiably and asked me,
Junior, what's your major? Which class are you in?
He was a completely different existence from Qin Xingye. I confessed my feelings to him after a club team building dinner. We went to an amusement park. I said, Senior, let's have an archery competition. They were giving out small plushies at the archery booth that day. I told him you definitely won't win more than me. As night fell, he seemed even more gentle and accommodating. The evening breeze blew through his hair. He smiled brightly.
You'll definitely be the winner in the end, because all my plushies will all be given to you.
I froze instantly. To think someone would concede so easily, just because I wanted to win. That night, I confessed my feelings, and he accepted. Bai Xiaoyan was a wonderful boyfriend. He would bring me breakfast, and every time we went on a date, buy me a bouquet of my favorite flowers, and always make time to prepare surprises for me. If it weren't for the incidents that happened later, Qin Xingye and I might never have gotten together. Thinking of all this, I couldn't help but look at his profile. My silence seemed like a tacit admission. Qin Xingye didn't get a rebuttal from me.
I understand.
Having grown used to seeing him so smug, arrogant, and uninhibited appearance, seeing him act like a wronged little wife right now makes me feel a bit soft-hearted. Actually you.
I understand. I have no right to care so much.
Stubbornly turning 90 degrees, looking up at the sky in melancholy, as expected of young Master Qin. His adaptability is truly top-notch. Just a week after mentioning Bai Xiaoyan, he actually returned from overseas. He led a team and joined my partner company. When we met at the company, he had completely shed the immaturity of his student days and become much more mature and proper. He took a sip of light tea, his voice still gentle.
Ye Zhen, I've always felt that I owe you an apology.
I was still young back then, and I didn't understand Bai Xiaoyan's choice. When he was going abroad, I said I would go with him.
Ye Zhen, I don't want your life to change because of me.
Why can't I go with you? But Jiu can go abroad with you? You guys spend every day together doing experiments, and now you're even leaving the country together. Have you fallen in love with her? He said to me.
Because this is the path she also wants to take. But you're different, Ye Zhen. In your life plan, this wasn't originally a part of it. Don't make this kind of decision for me. I can't bear the responsibility.
Let me go with you. Or break up with me. What happened next was that we went our separate ways. He went abroad with the girl who shared his ambitions. I used to resent Bai Xiaoyan, thinking he treated me that way because he fell for someone else. But thinking back on it later, it's actually very hard for anyone to carry the weight of another person's destiny. Bai Xiaoyan's choice wasn't really wrong. I don't resent you. Back then, I was immature. He looked at me, a faint light shining in his eyes.
These past few years, are you doing well?
I nodded. His gaze fell upon my wedding ring.
I mean, are you happy?
I thought of a certain someone at home, pestering me to go out with me, and after being rejected by me, shrinking back into bed like a little punching bag.
That's true. I have no right.
I smiled gently, very happy. A trace of disappointment flashed across Bai Xiaoyan's eyes, and he remained silent for a moment before opening his mouth again.
Actually, I knew that 2 months after you broke up with me, you were going to have a flash marriage. I thought about going back to find you, but it was already too late by then. I always felt your decision was a bit too hasty. Maybe.
When he said this, He looked up at me. In his clear eyes, there was a certain probing and certainty.
Everything can start over.
His words made me panic a little and knock over the coffee. The scalding liquid startled me, and the back of my hand immediately became red and swollen. Bai Xiaoyan suddenly stood up and grabbed my hand. The sound of something dropping to the floor came from the doorway. We both turned to look. Behind the open crack of the door, revealed an extraordinarily handsome face. Oh no. It was my amnesiac husband, following his line of sight. It was exactly Bai Xiaoyan holding my hand, asking me if I was burned. A touch of scarlet welled up in the depths of his eyes, and his good-looking mouth pressed into a flat line, wanting to cry but having no tears. Pitiful and touching. Thinking from his perspective, right now I was the nanny in his house, and he had to play the part of swallowing his anger. He said in a hoarse voice,
"Sorry to intrude."
He turned his head and left. Hey, Qin Xingye. I quickly let go of his hand and got up to go after him. He was tall and had long legs. I ran a few steps before catching him at the elevator. I had been chasing him the whole way, and now I was getting a bit annoyed. I grabbed his wrist and pulled him over. I'm telling you. The rest of my words got stuck in my throat. His red eyes and a grieved look instantly struck my heart. That little spark of anger vanished without a trace. Oh my, what's going on? My baby is so wrong. He brushed my hand away.
He's back. I'm leaving.
Don't listen to me. I thought about just coming clean. You're my real husband. Even though I really like this delicate, aggrieved side of him, seeing him so upset made me feel bad too. Actually, you are mine.
Xingye. Long time no see.
Bai Xiaoyan caught up at that moment. Bai Xiaoyan reached out his hand. Qin Xingye glanced at his hand. The aggrieved look from just now was already put away. He became proud again. He reached out and shook Bai Xiaoyan's hand.
Long time no see, senior.
On the surface, everything seemed fine, except that Qin Xingye and Bai Xiaoyan were gripping each other's hands so hard they turned white. Bai Xiaoyan was full of confusion. She broke up with me 4 years ago anyway. There's no need to be like this, right? But he still extended an invitation.
Let's have a meal together.
As a result, the three of us, just like that, sat down awkwardly at the same dining table. Speaking of which, back in our school days, after Bai Xiaoyan and I started dating, Qin Xingye rarely appeared in front of me. Once, on my way home, I ran into him. He was standing there, leaning against his car. He turned his head and looked at me. He didn't look very happy. I couldn't help but furrow my brows. He paused slightly and asked me,
"Do you really like him?
Or do I like you?"
How am I worse than him?
You're worse in every way. The night fell upon his brows, revealing a hint of loneliness. He gave a cold turned around, got into his car, and sped away. After that, we rarely bumped into each other. Two people who used to think they were bound to cross paths actually wouldn't meet at all if one of them wasn't trying to. You really just don't run into them. To show my hospitality as the host, I let Bai Xiaoyan order first. After he read out a few dish names, Qin Xingye's expression grew increasingly cold.
Don't you know she doesn't like spicy food anymore?
Bai Xiaoyan paused as he handed over the menu, and then said,
Sorry, I didn't really know.
That shows you don't care about her at all.
Even a smooth talker like Bai Xiaoyan was a bit stunned at this moment. Bai Xiaoyan muttered in his heart, Wait, I'm her ex-boyfriend. You're her husband. Why should I be the one looking after her? And Qin Xingye, staring at Bai Xiaoyan's bewildered look, felt his anger surge even more, as if saying, Someone who cares so little about me actually got to marry me, instead of him marrying me.
So you've stayed overseas all these years?
Yes. Leading a team overseas. Now that everything is fully developed, I return to the country.
In your heart, is your career more important, or is she?
Well, this.
Do you know how she suffered all these years?
At this point, I was also a bit surprised. How did I get through it? Thinking about it carefully, from Qin Xingye's current perspective, I'm just a wife whose husband hasn't come home in years and doesn't care about me at all. I have no choice but to stay in an empty house all alone, forcing me to complain to Qin Xingye. It did sound pretty pitiful. Bai Xiaoyan was also dumbfounded.
I don't seem to know much about it. Sorry.
Something just feels off. I hurriedly served him some food, trying to stuff his mouth with it. He stared at my protective behavior, pondering with a strange expression for a long while. Suddenly, a glint of light flashed in his eyes, startling me and making my heart race. What is he trying to do now? Then, he spoke up.
So you are destined to lose her like this. Compared to you, she values me more now. It's me.
I finally understand what he meant just now. Turns out he was showing off his confidence. Bai Xiaoyan was completely confused, his head full of questions. Yet Qin Xingye was absolutely determined right now, competing and fighting for attention, focusing entirely on pouring water for me at the table, serving me food, and even eagerly grabbing tissues to wipe my mouth. Bai Xiaoyan calmly watched the two of us, showing off our affection so intensely. But I guessed, deep down, he probably thought Qin Xingye must be. Before leaving, Qin Xingye went to get the car.
I was originally worried that you weren't very happy now, that you married him on an impulse after we broke up, that you married him. Looking at it now, you two are doing great.
I smiled. He's been sick lately, and can't remember some things, but we are indeed very happy. Bai Xiaoyan curled his lips.
Ye Zhen, honestly, coming back to the country this time, I've always been quite conflicted. I was afraid your life wasn't happy. But now that I've seen it with my own eyes and know you're happy, I'm even happier for you.
I pretended not to understand the loneliness in his words, and waved at him with a smile, just as he wished. I really didn't adjust my life path because of you. We're both living better lives now. He saw that Bai Xiaoyan wasn't with us, and secretly breathed a sigh of relief. But in the next second, his temper flared up again.
He's back in the country, and he doesn't even keep you company?
I nodded my head. He frowned.
A guy like that, why did you even get with him?
As soon as we got home, he grabbed my arm and asked me,
what exactly do you see in him?
I actually pondered this question for a moment, and answered him, because he doesn't compete with me. Unlike a certain annoying guy, those beautiful eyes showed a second of sorrow.
Then I won't compete with you anymore either. Okay?
In the past 20 years or so, I wouldn't have dared to dream that Qin Xingye could use such an expression to say something like this to me. My astonishment right now could simply be described as jaw-dropping. Amnesia is really a wonderful thing. After he finished speaking, he stared into my eyes somewhat embarrassedly. A few days later, I took him to the hospital for another checkup. After examining him, the doctor told me
that the blood clot in his brain was almost cleared. He estimated that in a few more days, once the blood clot dissolved completely, his amnesia would be cured.
Hearing this, a faint wave of sadness welled up in my heart. This slightly silly and cute Qin Xingye is going to disappear. I'm really reluctant to let him go.
Why that look? Is my health really bad?
I shook my head. It's quite good. It's just that you won't be my baby for much longer, because you're about to go back to being my husband.
She really doesn't want me anymore.
A couple of days later, a press conference was held for the new collaboration project. Bai Xiaoyan also arrived at the venue as part of the partners' technical team. The reporters had already entered the venue. When I went on stage to handle the interviews, it was broadcast live across the entire internet. I fluently answered all the questions raised by the reporters. To build momentum for the new project, President Yi, you and your husband are known as a model couple in the business world. I wonder if the finalization of this collaboration was discussed with your husband? This title of model couple is actually a bit funny to talk about. It seemed to be the second year of my marriage to Qin Xingye. It was raining that night. The car was parked in the courtyard. There was still a distance of about 50 meters to walk inside. Qin Xingye pulled me into his chest. I wrapped one arm around his neck and held up a black umbrella with the other, leaning close to his chest. Someone took a picture of this and posted it online, paired with a fateful-sounding BGM. We went viral on the internet for a while. Then netizens discovered our identities. Netizens caught on, saying that families like ours do indeed have true love. But the truth behind that photo was actually like this. Carry me inside.
You want me to carry you?
My leather shoes can't get wet. Are you going to carry me or not? He gave a cold snort, got out of the car first, and picked me up against the wind. And I naturally opened a black umbrella for him. Thinking of Qin Xingye, the corners of my mouth secretly turned up. My husband also gave me advice and suggestions, whether in daily life or at work. He has guided me a lot. I am very thankful to him, and I love him very, very much. After saying this, I couldn't help but feel a bit of regret welling up in my heart. I don't know how Qin Xingye will make fun of me after he recovers. I sighed softly. I finally made it to the end of work. Looking at my phone, I realized my family had called me so many times it almost blew up my phone. I panicked. Aunt Lu rarely calls me. The assistant in front of me also looked anxious.
President Yi. President Qin is missing.
Missing? I hurriedly dialed his number. It was already turned off. Aunt Lu said she had looked all around the house and couldn't find him. I immediately decided I had to hurry home.
President Yi, there's a dinner with a partner company later.
Cancel it for me.
But
I drove home, burning with anxiety. Aunt Lu hurried over and said,
President Qin seemed to be triggered by something earlier. After watching the news on TV, He spaced out for a long time and then went out. He hasn't come home yet.
I furrowed my brows, hurriedly wondering where he could have gone. I guessed he didn't go looking for his parents. Otherwise, the two elders would have definitely called me. There was no word from his best friend either. Where else could he have gone? I paced around the room anxiously twice, and suddenly had a flash of inspiration. I remembered a place, a secret base. When I rushed over, he was indeed there, sitting alone and desolate on the swing, looking very lonely. I couldn't help but slow my pace, and approached him, squatting down. I looked up at him, and grabbed his hand, but he pulled away. Why did you run out by yourself? Do you know I was worried sick?
I saw the news about you. You really love him, don't you? You don't like me at all, do you?
He lowered his eyes, the sorrow in them almost palpable. Some vague thoughts in my heart suddenly became clear. His memory right now was stuck at age 21. So, buying the piano was to get me to practice at his house, right? Practicing drawing with me was to get me to go sketching with him, right? Scoring 30 points higher than me on the college entrance exam, but still applying to University A, was because he wanted to go to the same college as me, right? I grabbed his fingers a bit forcefully. You have a crush on me, don't you? Tears hung on his eyelashes, and his eyes were faintly red.
I can't like you anymore, Ye Zhen. You don't like me at all.
His voice was choked with sobs. My heart suddenly ached. I stood up straight and hugged his fluffy head as he sat on the swing, sitting on the swing. His warm tears soaked my clothes. He said,
"What should I do? How can I stop my heart from hurting so much?"
My hand gently rubbed his head, but my heart was tickled by his tears. I softly coaxed him. "Let's go home. Come home with me." "Okay, baby." He looked up at me, the corners of his eyes still faintly red from crying.
"That's not my home."
I lower my head and kiss his forehead, gently rubbing his head. "Come home with me. I'll tell you the answer when we get home." The next day, the sun is warm. I stretch lazily, waking up comfortably. Morning.
Morning.
Calm and capable. This tone of voice, something's not right. Qin Xingye rests his chin on one hand, meeting my gaze. His eyes curve into a smile. At this thought, I immediately want to slip away, but I'm pinned down again.
I'm abroad all year round. Never coming home?
I don't dare talk back, just laughing foolishly. Hubby, you've recovered. I missed you so much.
Don't change the subject. Don't cling. You know exactly what you did.
What bad thing did I do? During your illness, I waited on you hand and foot. Instead, a certain someone. Turns out that so long ago, you were already deeply in love with me.
Look how happy you are.
Sure enough, that soft and squishy Qin Xingye is gone. I walk over and sit next to him, chatting together in the living room. Only now do I suddenly realize I actually miss him quite a bit. I just miss the him right now. Why didn't you confess to me back then? His tone is sour.
Weren't you pining for that good senior of yours?
Don't be jealous of him. If it weren't for him, we might not have gotten married so quickly.
How so?
Honestly, I went through a pretty tough time after the breakup. When I collapsed at the top of the stairs, a face suddenly flashed into my view, completely blocking out the night sky in my eyes. Qin Xingye reached over and felt my forehead. I was unusually quiet and pushed his hand away. "Young Master Qin, my love is dead. Do you understand?"
So what if your love is dead? It's nothing.
When I woke up, I was lying in our big bed. Mom came into the room and asked me,
"What exactly were you doing last night when Xiaoya brought you back?"
This was absolute slander, but in my mind, Qin Xingye immediately popped up, those eyes full of teasing, wearing a faint smile in the dark, telling me,
"So what if your love is completely dead?"
He made it sound so easy. I suddenly gripped Mom's hand tightly and said, "Actually, I've taken a liking to Qin Xingye. The Qin elders were extremely fond of me, so they'd probably be very happy about it. This would definitely make Qin Xingye. Definitely make him throw a massive fit at home, haha." Who was thrilled? I didn't even want to say. I happily stayed at home, waiting for the wonderful news of Qin Xingye going crazy. Who knew that the next day, word came from the Qin family. It's settled.
When do you plan to hold the wedding?
The little cake in my hand dropped to the floor. I messed up. What do I do now? I groggily made it to the wedding venue. When we were exchanging rings, I finally snapped out of it and asked him, "Why didn't you refuse?" A second of awkwardness flashed across his face.
Weren't you hoping to discuss me?
He curled his lips playfully and whispered in my ear.
Let's see who's disgusted by who now. Don't go crying and making a scene later. I absolutely won't let you go.
For richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, we will support each other.
I poked his waist and asked him, so, shouldn't we thank Bai Xiaoyan?
I guess you could say that.
Qin Xingye got up from the sofa. I stared at his back. The light shone on the top of his head, turning his black hair into a brilliant gold. I couldn't help but lunge forward and hug his arm. A question suddenly popped into my head. When we first registered as freshmen, that girl asked for your contact info. Did you give it to her? Hearing this, he narrowed his eyes and smiled, like a little fox.
I'm not telling you.
But back then, he had pointed at my back in the crowd.
See her? That's the girl I like.